All right, guys, that's it. One, two, three. It's Drinking on the Edge. I'm David Furit's host, and located at Radio Free Rhinecliff along the eastern shores of the Hudson River, tucked away behind the Epicurean grocery store in the village Triangle. Joining me today are not one, not two, not three, not four, but five vintners scattered across the U.S. We're all gathered here today to speak and for you to hear us out about a grape variety that is named Blaufränkisch and Lemberger. It goes by many other names, but for U.S. purposes, we're just going to refer to those two names. I have joining me a guy who's been on the show once before, Fred Merwath from Hermann J. Wiemer Vineyards in the Finger Lakes. Welcome, Fred.
Thanks for having me.
And who's also a second-timer, having just done his first recording of his Kiona Winery from Washington State, J.J. Williams.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be a Blauhard.
A fellow who I've worked with in a previous project in the nearby state of New Jersey of his eponymous name winery, Mike Beneduce.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
A gentleman who I've met long ago when I had some work with his upstate Michigan comrades there in the dual peninsulas of Old Mission and Leelanau, Bryan Ulbrich of Left Foot Charley.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, and then lastly, but not leastly, a woman whose work I have enjoyed in different things that I've done in Oregon. It's Morgan Beck.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
We have so many of your wines here, and thank you so much for sharing them, not only with me, which is pro forma here, Drinking on the Edge, but you took up my provocation and you all share with one another. So who would like to give our listening audience an idea about this funkily named grape variety? What's it all about?
All right, I'll go first. To me, it's about spice, and it's about a distinct character and a grape that all of us from our respective regions can lean on what's going on in terms of our own terroir and our own climatic realities, and it gets to express itself. We're not leaning on like the entrenched histories of the most famous regions in the world. And what I love about it for Michigan is that Blaufränkisch gives us an opportunity to bring a red wine from a lesser, or for some people, unknown region, and let the wine do all the talking and not the history of some grand grape variety that will stay nameless or something. But it gives a good chance for us to show that what we can do up here and let the wine do the talking and not us.
I always describe it to first-time tasters as a mix between Pinot Noir and Syrah. So it's got generally this like really bright freshness, can tend to be pretty linear on the palate, but also these sort of darker, brambly fruit flavors, definitely a spice element that runs through. I know our wines and tasting your guys' wines, I think it's a similar thread. There's pros and cons to introducing a sort of unknown grape variety to people. But I think, as Bryan mentioned, one of the pros is that really there's no preconceived notions most of the time when people dip their nose into this glass. So you really have the opportunity to make an impression without having any set of expectations for what they're about to smell or taste.
I'll continue with that thought. We here in Oregon, clearly, there's a lot of talk about Pinot Noir. So literally everything is compared to Pinot Noir. And it's really fun for us to have another grape variety that can at least connect and be reminiscent of something that people are really comfortable with, but of course have just another dimension of fruit and spice. And one of the big things for me that I love so much about this grape is just the versatility across the different years that we see here. In warmer years, we still have this absolutely beautiful low pH, making a really balanced wine with very little intervention. Compared to working with Pinot Noir, it is really easy and it's beautiful every year, and really nice and cooler vintages as well. I think just to talk a little bit about like the history of Blaufränkisch and or Lemberger, the region that I think most people would talk about is Burgenland in Austria, and Blau means blue, and the Fränkisch side, that is a name that came from the Middle Ages, given to a lot of high quality varieties, indicating like superiority in the grape variety. And the name didn't appear until an exhibition in Vienna and was officially adopted in like 1862, which is pretty late for in consideration for that area. And then later recognized in Germany, and I think like about 10 years later. But one thing, like Mike mentioned too, it's this grape variety that is not well known. It has a difficult name to pronounce. When I got to Johan and started working with this grape in 2015, there were still so many people that would see the name and say, oh, I'm not interested in trying that just because they can't pronounce it. And now I almost feel like there's this shift of they can't pronounce it, so definitely they want to try it.
I had the opportunity to speak at a international Blaufränkisch conference, which was held in Slovenia a couple years ago. And it was like 40 producers all over the world. I think there was 8 different countries. And one of the things we kept talking about was like, we need to come up with a singular name for this grape because we're not doing ourselves any favor where it's Blaufränkisch in Austria, Lemberger in Germany, Kekfrankos in Hungary, Modra Frankinia in Slovenia. They all have such a history with this grape in Central Europe. So it's understandable that they want to use their sort of indigenous name for it. But from a marketing perspective, people are probably tasting our wines and not, some of them don't even realize it's from the same grape. So definitely sometimes an uphill battle on that perspective.
The easiest one for the American tongue to pronounce, in my opinion, is the Czech version, Frankovka.
Right.
Not that you'll find much Czech Frankovka here in the United States.
I think that was a question for me to all of you. We have a choice, per se, of which variety we choose to put on the front label. Clearly in Washington, I feel like Washington adopted and is known to represent the Lemberger grape, or the German name. Why? And I think, who was it? Fred. The 2023 version has Blaufränkisch and your 2018 has Lemberger. I guess I'll speak to it. When we were looking to diversify our property and originally bring this grape into our property, we sourced the budwood from a Washington winery that named it, they called it and recognized it as Lemberger. But because we were really into Austrian wines and it was the Austrian wine version and climate and everything that inspired us to put it into the vineyard, we decided to call it Blaufränkisch here. So that's, at least for Johan's side. Can anyone else speak to like why they've chosen to say Blaufränkisch or Lemberger on the front?
JJ, I'm going to say that Kiona historically was the first to plant this grape variety in North America, dating to, I believe it was 82, or at least the 82 vintage was the first produced, JJ. Is that correct?
Our first Lemberger vines went in 1976, and the first commercial bottling of Lemberger was a Kiona bottling in the 1980 vintage. So we've been at it for 42 vintages now, but our budwood came from Germany. And they were concerned in the early days of Washington wine with frost and freezing. Mm-hmm. And Lemberger, as we know, is very cold hardy. And so Lemberger was a hedge before we knew that things like Cabernet and Mourvedre and Grenache and Zinfandel even can ripen in and live in Washington and live through our winters. Lemberger was the hedge against that concern. We happen to be old enough at Kiona that the Lemberger that we planted and that we still farm were still around and we'd never ripped it out. So there's a little bit of a survivorship bias there. There was more Lemberger planted in Washington in the 80s and 90s. Those things have either got ripped out or those wineries went under or got consolidated and that type of thing.
JJ, I had the opportunity to visit your region a couple years ago, and I have to say I was disheartened to see that everybody was ripping out these Blaufränkisch vines to plant Cabernet. I know Red Mountain's hot for Cabernet right now, but can you give us a sense of just the trajectory of this grape in your region? Is it still on the decline or leveling out?
I think that Lemberger is experiencing a bit of a resurgence because wine salespeople are realizing that having a fruit-forward wine that doesn't require a lot of expensive oak élevage and that you can release to market is like a Gamay Noir type of wine that's fresh and you can drink it in its youth and it's easy to pair. And our version is $20 retail. So this idea that you can have a wine that no one's ever heard of before, and I think you guys might agree, being different is a feature in 2025 and not a bug. And so having this thing that kind of has built-in SEO is easy to like and that super wine nerds can put on their wine list. In sommelier can really like flex their nerd muscles there by having a Blaufränkisch or a Lemberger on the menu. There is a resurgence in interest, and for the first time in 40 years, the phone is ringing for people who want to buy Lemberger fruit. And we've been pushing this rock uphill for 20, 30, 40 years, and now there's finally some momentum. There's a little bit of hesitancy to share that fruit, but we do sell to a few folks. But I think the tide has turned.
Fred, what are you seeing in the Finger Lakes? You have the change here on this label, but I've always felt like the Finger Lakes was more on the Lemberger game.
Our first vines, just a little background to that, went in, Hermann planted those in 1999. That material came from Ontario, which had been Ontario not nearly as long, JJ, as your vines, but probably since the late 80s, brought in from Germany also. I started here in 2001 with Hermann and started making the wine in 2003. And the first 10 vintages, we just blended it away. It was just, it would pick it right around middle of Riesling harvest, and it was just nondescript, pretty benign, expected of young vines, I think. Also, we were just doing pretty basic winemaking with it at the time. But a couple things. One is the viticulture it's a tolerant variety, like cold tolerant, it's durable. And so, Bryan, to your question, like we've noticed that over these years, and why we're planting more of it is viticulturally, it is significantly easier than Pinot Noir. It rivals Cabernet Franc in terms of its durability. You can pick it early. As Morgan, you mentioned, it's versatile, but you can make rosé from it. You can make pretty intense reds from it also. So you have this kind of longer growing season to work with it. And it doesn't fall apart, which is one of the things that this region, the Finger Lakes, has struggled with the Pinot Noirs and sometimes Chardonnay, but we were looking for durability, both from the winter months, but also in that ripening period. And Hermann, originally from Germany, it was natural for us to call it Lemberger. There's just no good name for it. My business partner, Oscar, and I, when we first bottled it and labeled it in 2009, we debated this right up to the moment of printing of the labels between Blaufränkisch and Lemberger, and couldn't decide. So we did one game, one rock, paper, scissors. And I was on the Blaufränkisch side, he was on Lemberger, clearly won. And then, so hence it was Lemberger up until 2021. And then he came to me, he's like, I think we should change it to Blaufränkisch. He finally got on board with the Austrianness of it.
Harkening to what you said, I don't know this to be a fact, but I would venture an educated guess that those Lemberger vines that were brought from Germany into Ontario were probably done by Hermann Vyds.
Yes.
That legacy that continues to this day at Cave Spring and other operations out there.
That's exactly right. And JJ, your old plants, most of the plants that we have are all probably pretty close to the same plant material. It hasn't been given the respect of classic variety like Pinot or Chardonnay or even Riesling of having lots of different clonal selections or sourcing selections.
All the Middle European varieties, I would argue, have a harder time than Western European varieties transplanting their popularity and fame in other parts of the world, our part of the New World in particular. The French and the Spaniards and the Italians have done better, certainly the French, than compared to their German, Austrian.
I think that there's an element with creating a compelling portfolio of wines. Here on Red Mtn, we could very easily be the winery that makes all Cabernets, like here's Clone 2, here's Clone 8, here's our 5 vineyards. They're all $100, like ready, go. You also could be a winery where you just make weird stuff, where it's like, hey, here's Orange Gewürztraminer, Carbonic Carmenere, Petnat Lemberger, and whatever, stuff people haven't heard of before. And I think if you're talking about the sellability of a portfolio in a winery, you need a little bit of both. You can't just have the weird stuff because you walk in and like, what the hell is going on here? You have no touchstone to figure out if they actually know what they're doing or not. Hey, you like Cabernet, I like Cabernet. Let's both drink this Cabernet and agree that we know what we're doing. Yes, now try Lemberger, something you haven't had before. And when I go out and sell wine across the country, walk into a wine shop in Memphis, Tennessee, and we're drinking wine in the broom closet out of a Dixie cup in the back, like, The moment I pull Lemberger out of the bag, hey, Lemberger, they perk up. And I think that having wines like this make the other wines more memorable. So like the Cabernet becomes more memorable because I pulled Lemberger out of the bag. Liquid intrigue is important because there's a lot of competition out there, but there's not a lot of competition in making Lemberger.
I love that liquid intrigue. And what Fred's talking about too with the winter hardiness and the way it seems to thrive in an interesting diversity of climates. Even in Michigan, we've got 2 different zones here. But one of the reasons we've loved it, and we put it in 2001 as an experiment on a mediocre site, and it thrived. And so we've planted a lot more of it. It's now one of the most widely planted red varieties in northern Michigan. It likes the well-drained soils. It can tolerate the cool, slow ripening curve that we have. And I think that also speaks to why it's relevant in this larger conversation of wine, because it has something to say from where it's grown, like Riesling would, or many other varieties. Having Blaufränkisch there to do the lifting for the red wine side of our portfolio is huge for us.
We've got a couple different blocks spread out across our farm, and like the grapes even look and taste different from them, much less the wine. So it really is pretty compelling, the difference that it can have from changes in microclimates, much less all the different states that we're producing it in.
I don't grow Pinot, but Morgan, I'll bet you can talk about how finicky and difficult and prone to disease and pressure like Pinot Noir is. And then you flip the page, it's like Lemberger, like it's Old Faithful, it's reliable. And being able to make a product that you can count on and know that you can produce it in a high quality year after year means that the consumer realistically can pay less for a wine that's just as good and just as tasty and has just as much love and care on the winemaking side, because you're not balding because you're worried about things on the vineyards.
Even in a cold year, a warm year, a disease-heavy year, here in Oregon, powdery mildew is our biggest pest. And as long as we get that first leaf pull early on Blau, we do 2 leaf pullings on Blau just because the leaves are as big as dinner plates. So to be able to have the spray penetration in our biodynamic and organic spray program for the year, if we pull leaves before we start pulling for Pinot, we have good coverage. That sets us up for pretty much letting it roll. And it can hang through a couple rains during harvest. I find this purity and transparency in the grape that I think it really is one that shows our terroir. I see a lot of similarities in some of my favorite Pinot blocks, but almost amplified. And I know JJ mentioned earlier, it doesn't need wood. It doesn't need whole cluster. It doesn't need anything fancy. It just gives this beautiful kind of complex wine from asking very little of us. So that there's a lot to be said there.
Morgan, can I ask, and maybe for everybody, what's like an average pick window or harvest date for you guys for these?
Blaufränkisch is definitely after our Pinot Noir. I would say our normal harvest for Pinot starts the 3rd or 4th week of September, and Blau is either towards the end of the 1st week of October or in the 2nd week. Unless it's a late season, we've harvested like close to Halloween before. We grafted this variety in 2010, and the first year working with it was 2011. That's one of the coldest vintages that Oregon's had on record in a very long time. And it was picked in November. And the 2011 is still one of my favorite expressions that we've made here. Yeah. How about you all? When do you pick?
We're almost always in Michigan last week of October. We've definitely dipped into November many times. Last year was an anomaly. We were getting some exceedingly ripe fruit coming off in the 2nd week of October. But for us, it's one that we see a quick accumulation of sugar in the vineyard, but like only up to about 21 bricks or so. And then it sort of levels, and we may see increases in sugar and get up into the 22 range or something, 23. But the more significant thing is the flavor development, the acid change that goes on. So up here, we have to wait. It's one of our longest waits on it, and just give it its time. And I think what you said, Morgan, about its tolerance for inclement weather is certainly true in Michigan too. We can have a wide range of events from rain to snow, and that one seems to laugh it off. And that's part of what I love about it. And again, it's good for the farm. They're still getting decent crops that are financially sustainable, as well as how we farm. We can every year come to our customers and say, hey, look at this vintage. This is interesting. And it's not like the last one. They're like record albums in that sense, that you want something different each release.
We used to leave it for the very last thing besides our dessert Rieslings. Part of it was just a small block that we need to bring in. So getting Riesling done felt like a full accomplishment. And then I could bring in, and I think through that process of not totally forgetting about it, but semi-forgetting about it, that we realize all of that, the durability of it through the vintage and through all these different vintages. That was almost always in November that we would pick it. We've pulled back to middle of October, but there's a grower neighbor of ours who almost on the dot will pick it around the 2nd or 3rd of October, every vintage. And I think that creates a kind of a little bit lighter style, less of the overt kind of blueberry and some of those riper tones. And so that's why we've kept to that later pick, 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks later sometimes. But we do pick it in a manner that I do with Gewürztraminer. I do a pick about 10 days early and then wait on the older blocks till basically that 3rd week of October. Capture some acidity, some lighter flavors, and then let the more developed come in later on. I think those dates are going to continue to move up a little bit.
Yeah, Washington, our Red Mountain area is a little different than the other areas here on the call. We can fully ripen Cabernet Sauvignon, things like that. So we're growing Lemberger in a blast furnace compared to some of these other places. That being said, we do grow grapes for a producer that does a pet nat Lemberger, and it's a delight, and that's usually one of our first picks of the year. The pick for our red wine usually happens towards the end of September, beginning of October, but we're also cropping it pretty high because, again, we want that kind of like Red Mountain Beaujolais type of style. So we can go a little higher and retain acidity and still have bright, fresh fruit.
JJ, do you leave more leaves on for sun protection, and are you concerned about that side of things?
Lots of leaf thinning, your traditional Western sprawl, pretty large canopies there on the sunny side. But yeah, you do have to watch out for shriveling, but that's true of all of our grape growing here.
Using your mention of a rosé pet nat there, JJ, you use that as a segue into the one lone rosé pet nat that was sent to us. Mike, you want to talk us through this, and everybody else can join in after he's give us a little bit of groundwork on it?
We make 3 different pet nats. This is 100% Blaufränkisch. We make 3 different versions of Blaufränkisch as well. So we do a still dry rosé, we do a rosé pet nat, and then we do obviously our sort of classic dry red style. For both the rosé pet nat and the dry rosé, we actually farm a specific block of Blaufränkisch. It's about a 2-acre block, and that allows us, like JJ was saying, to do a little bit less leaf pulling. We can hang a little bit more fruit, somewhere in the range of maybe 4.5 tons an acre, which is quite a bit for us. And then we generally pick that sort of toward the end of September, somewhere around 21 bricks, really trying to get a lot of natural acidity in there. We ferment this with a native yeast strain that we've actually cultured from our vineyard here in stainless steel. And then as a traditional pet nat, as it's finishing fermentation, let it finish in the bottle. But it's fun for us. It's a great wine in the summer. It flies off the shelf. Really good for just economically for cash flow because it's early to market while we're putting the red in oak for 18 months and then some time in the barrel. So is anybody else making either a sparkling or a still rosé from Blaufränkisch? Because I know when I visited the growers in Austria, they really felt this was a great grape for rosé as well. And I love our dry rosé from this variety too.
Yeah, we have a dedicated dry rosé vineyard, and it's been great. We were doing Cab Franc prior to that, which was challenging to not just have a green pepper wine. And so Blau stepped in and really opened the doors for a full kind of experience of rosé as a varietal.
We do, it's not solely Blaufränkisch, but we do an Austrian red blend, which has been Blau, Zweigelt, and Saint Laurent. And it's a rosé called Disco Chicken Rosé. So it's like a fun and affable rosé, but actually inspired by one of my favorite Austrian rosés that I've tried, that they actually press the red grape or macerate briefly, press the red grapes, and then they ferment the rosé juice on top of destemmed Veltliner berries.
That's cool.
So I've done that with both Gruner and Kerner in different years. So it's not a solely Blaufränkisch rosé, but I agree. I think it's a really nice wine for pink wine.
Have you all had a chance to taste this one? What you think? What you think of Mike's rendition?
It's delicious. Good job. This is time travel wine. Open the bottle on time travel and then it's empty. So
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I opened this wine yesterday, actually, and I'll admit that I had it too cold. I like it today at cellar temp. I think we can all agree that Blaufränkisch is a highly aromatic grape, and to be able to have those aromatics jump out of the glass, sometimes chilling things down, make it a little bit harder to see that. So I really like it. Not as cold as I had it yesterday. It's really nice.
Good acid, good color, fruits popping. Yeah. When this winery contacted us, it's Grosgrain in Waller. They came to us and said, we want to do a Pet Nat Lemberger. Do you think that'll work? And so we put them in one of the older blocks that ripened slow. And they said they wanted to pick it pretty early. And they sent us a couple bottles when they first made it. And I very distinctly remember this meeting in the office. And we are all looking around at each other. It's like, God damn it. Like, why didn't we think of that?
It's a fun one to work with. We've been tweaking our Pet Nat production techniques a little bit. And one of the things I found really helped get a little bit finer bubble was when we do bottle it, we ferment it sur lot, like you would a champagne method, on its side at cooler temperatures. So like in the 50, 55 range. It takes a much longer time, but I just noticed the mousse is a lot finer using that technique versus just throwing it in a case and letting it finish fermenting.
Given the time that we have left in this chat, we got a lot of your expressions all read to hit upon. Who wants to stick their neck out first and have us focus on theirs?
I like that.
After you.
I was just going to say there's a concrete from Johan, and then we have a ceramic amphora. And those two might be fun to talk about because we talked a little bit about oak, and we've found that we are decreasing our new oak percentage radically every year due to it creates like a static interference in some ways on the grape variety. I like it, but I think it's more of a really background reverb type thing that you don't want to overdo or it overpowers the fruit. So I was excited to see the concrete, and then I think those two would be fun to talk about first, personally.
So this concrete bottle was an experiment. And I wanted to show something with some age. We don't have the age back to some of the years that you all have referenced, but 2016 was the first and only year that we've played with a different vessel for fermentation. And this is a 100% destemmed, fermented in concrete. And yeah, it did age in a neutral barrel after fermentation. And I've been really surprised how it's held up over time. I still feel like it's really tight and the tannins are finer grain than they were, of course, when we put it to bottle. It's just been fun to revisit over time and see how nice it's been evolving. And I think all of us probably can agree that I think Blaufränkisch is a very age-worthy wine. Clearly the chemistry is built for it. The tannin structure is present and ready for aging. And I always say it's one of the best kind of bang for your buck wines to be able to purchase and lay down and feel confident that it's going to evolve but still be fresh when you open it. So
when we tasted this last night with the crew, 2 restaurateurs and a chef showed up as well from our area, and they were commenting on its Northern Rhone qualities when we first popped the cork. And I've loved watching this evolve over the course of a day. And I think the other cool thing about Blau is that it's got that somewhat anti-oxidative, resist spoiling concept that you can taste this over the course of several days and it'll continue to tweak and evolve and not go into that weird oxidative state. So we really enjoyed that. I'm loving tasting it today as well. Do you find the concrete deacidifies things? Does it have any impact in that sense?
Honestly, I do see that. We use it on Chardonnay. So I really only have used it on varieties that I feel have a really stable pH to start with. But I did not see a significant buffer. The finished wine pH on this was like 3.3. Totally comfortable
Beautiful.
with that. Yeah. Textbook chemistry throughout. 2016 was a great year here. It was warm. So your mention of the kind of Northern Rhone qualities, I do feel like I see that. When cooler vintages in Oregon, we get more floral components and some more like almost black tea expressions. And then in warmer years, we see more closer to, someone else earlier said, it's this blend of Pinot Noir and Syrah. We see some more meat, usually like the darker red fruit, and just closer to some of those, Northern Rhone Syrah characteristics in warmer vintages. And 2016 was absolutely one of those years.
Can we reflect a little bit on your current release, the 2021 Blaufränkisch not concretized?
So this does have some whole cluster fermentation. It's about 25% in the total blend. And 2021 was a pretty average growing season here. Of course, a very welcome season after the wildfires in 2020, but really easy growing season, very little powdery mildew pressure. The wines had beautiful natural acidity coming in the door. For our fermentation methods, 25% whole cluster in the total blend, and we just do really light punch downs by foot. So we're really not trying to break the cap or really disturb the fruit, but just merely wet the cap and help our fermentation move through. Our red wine fermentations are usually on skins for anywhere between 14 to 21 days. Lower and slower is just what our natural and native yeast does here in our cellar. So we don't tend to hit like some of the peak temperatures that I was used to hitting at other wineries earlier in my career. And of course, working with Pinot, that was a little bit of a scare to start, but you get a different fruit profile, clearly at lower temperatures, a little bit less extraction from the heat not being as present, and being on skins for upwards to 3 weeks really allows a nice kind of build of the wine just through time. Élevage is, all of our Blaufränkisch is always over vintaged. So we keep everything in barrel for 19 to 20 months.
Anybody have some comments about this 2021 that we're enjoying now?
Delicious. It's a wine in the future. It's lower alcohol. It's layered. It's interesting. Good job.
Thank you.
Super tasty. I haven't thought of a whole cluster for Blaufränkisch. You don't get any greenness from this at all, and like really just adds a nice lift to the structure, and the aromatics really pretty.
Thank you, guys.
Our 23 is taking on a couple of those ideas. It's about 30% whole cluster. Start with pump over, finish lightly punch down. It is in sandstone jar. Part of this is in sandstone. The 24 is all in sandstone, mimicking Qvevri. Since we're working with Saperavi, we're using the jar for Blaufränkisch first, and then bring Saperavi into the jar after it. It's really interesting. So all spontaneous ferments. We see the same thing, very slow fermentation. This is our slowest fermentation on the red side, 25 to 30 days pretty routinely, which is quite nerve-wracking to get through that last little bit of sugar, but you don't get that extraction with that low heat. So I think it's really interesting.
Between the 2023 Blaufränkisch and the 2018 Lemberger, which should we be tasting first?
I would taste the 18 first. That was fully crushed and destemmed, stainless steel fermented, and that was in older barrels. And then the 23 is in older barrels, but the whole vintage sees about 3 months in the sandstone. And that does have the 30% whole cluster to it. And we're doing whole cluster on up to 30 to 35% on all of our Cab Francs, Blaufränkisch, a little bit of Pinot that I make.
This is the second oldest of the wines showcased here. Morgan's aforementioned 2016 Concrete was the oldest. I'm curious, as far as the development of these wines in the glass, what are y'all thinking about this 2018, 2016? How's the development occurring?
I think this wine is beautiful. Yeah. When I opened it, my initial thought was an older Bordeaux, and it's funny sitting watching your video here with the poster behind you. Yep. That was one of my notes from yesterday. And then both of your wines are extremely aromatic. And that really that was the common line for me. I see in the 2018 a lot of crushed rose petals and almost like this kind of grandma potpourri piece, which is really cool. I think we all know lots of floral aromatics come through in Blaufränkisch, but yeah, awesome wines.
I concur. The aromatics of the 2018 were terrific, and it's actually a nice mid-palate, really good core mid-palate there as well.
I think both of those older vintages, like if you tasted these blind, it would be hard to pull them out as the aged wines in this. They just have this staying power to both of them. And yeah, Fred, your 23 just has this lift to it. Do you think that a lot of that is coming from the whole cluster, or is that something you guys have experimented at different levels with?
Yeah, I think the whole cluster, and I tasted a little bit in, it's your 16, right, Morgan? That was whole cluster?
The 21.
The 21, where you get some of that little bit of lift on the mid palate up to the finish. I think I've enjoyed that on the Cab Francs also. And that's why we started with Cab Franc with whole cluster and then went to the Blaufränkisch to mimic that, and really elevated the fruit without going in the wrong direction, but just in that nice little lift.
Anybody else care to weigh in on Fred's examples?
I thought the 23 to me was the most kind of typical of Burgenland that I tasted. That was the one that kind of transported me to my aha moment of Blaufränkisch from Burgenland. So thanks for the little time transport there.
Okay, then whose wine should we taste next?
I'm happy to jump in if you like. So I sent everybody the 21 and 22 Blaufränkisch, mainly because I think they were really like complete opposite vintages for us. So it was interesting to see the vintage impact here. 21 was a cooler, sort of average precipitation year, but a longer ripening period. Great vintage for whites. I think the rest of our reds weren't the best quality, but the Blaufränkisch was definitely one that kind of emerged as just having this really beautiful aromatics to it, a little bit more elegance and freshness. And then 22 was the opposite vintage for us. So it was really warm, very dry, much riper fruit. So we were bringing that in with 24 bricks. Our harvest date is usually like mid to end of October. And these were just two different wines made pretty similar. We do mostly native fermentations. We do play with a few small batch commercial strains just to compare. And then we age the Blaufränkisch in like barriques, smaller barrels, for about 9 months, usually somewhere 10 to 15% new oak. And then we blend that into a cask. So it's like a big 4,000 liter neutral French oak cask, which they use quite a bit in Austria. And we finish the élevage in cask, which we found it just lets the blend harmonize a little bit, less oak impact, but it still gives it some oxygen. Yeah, just wanted to see if you guys noticed the kind of changes in the vintage there and how those are showing in the wines.
Yeah, yesterday the 21 for us was this taut, like constricted wine, and the 22 is glowing more today. After 24 hours or so of tasting it, that 21's really caught up, and a lot of those complexities have come out with a little more air. I thought the 22 was showing off right away, and it still is. It's almost identical to yesterday, which is cool to see the different curve of movement on the wine.
Really nice varietal typicity, both wines. It's Lemberger. I think I could pick that one out in a blind lineup pretty easily. Good job.
Thank you.
I mentioned to you earlier in the beginning of this episode that Mike and I had previous contact in some work I did on behalf of the state of New Jersey's wines. Subsequent to that, there was a special event just a Zoom meeting with Dr. Jose Vuillamose about the history details of this grape variety and New Jersey wines. And Mike took part in that, and there was examples from New Jersey there that, let's just say that Jose, who I had contact with today for other reasons, Mike, Jose remembered your wines. They were, I don't mind saying, his favorite of the tasting. I was trying to entice him to jump in as a quick hello because his international fame as one of the world's top grape geneticists, but he had other plans, unfortunately, but he says hello and does remember your wines. So good on you.
That's awesome. Great to hear. Yeah, it's been fun to see how this grape has taken off in Jersey. I think there's now about 15 growers, which is, we only have about 60 growers in our state right now. So it's pretty big percentage-wise of people that have started planting this. Most of them younger plantings. Going to be interesting to see how that evolves for our industry.
Way cool.
I have a question for the group. How are you guys selling this wine? Is it direct to consumer? Do you have 3 tiers? Is it going out to your club? How much are you making? All that good stuff.
Yeah, we're all of the above. The 2 wines I submitted were a wine club experiment. It was 1 fermentation, 3-ton fermentation. And then as we were draining, just so happened we went to amphora, a puncheon, and a barrique. And well, more than that, but we isolated those 3 for bottling as part of this education process with our wine club, that we're not ingredient-based wines. Most of these are natural fermentations, and it's about how we're aging and handling as much as obviously in the vineyard. But to show that aspect of it, that winemaking and the how you age the wine and midwife it through is way more than ingredients. So that was our point on these 2, is to show the difference that the handling has. So wine club's really important to us, but we are looking at multi-state distribution, and within our state too, just trying to really get the idea that there is more out there for customers to explore. I think part of the wine malaise out there is that a lot of restaurants are holding the same wine list as their neighbors. And if we can get in there and show all this really wild diversity, we can get customers revved up again about exploring and discovering new things. And so that's our angle with Blau, is you have a chance to try something new.
Talking about new things, what you've done here is you've shared with us 2 different expressions from the same vintage, a 2022 Blaufränkisch. One is in puncheon and one in amphora. Talk us through it.
Yeah, so it's 1 fermentation from our Swanson vineyard. This was the first planting after the initial 2001 experiment. And I think it was 2013. And we had this opportunity because we were experimenting and trying to figure out different aging concepts for the wine. So when we drained, it went into amphora, barrique, and puncheon. And when we have another blend. Our main blend is just an Old Mission Peninsula blend, which is all of the vineyards. And then every year we try to isolate something that we can pull out, whether it's a barrel selection or a vineyard selection. And this particular instance was a cool opportunity to show that how the vessel impacts aging on the wine. So it's the same fermentation, just different vessels on aging. So it was a volunteer fermentation. Great vintage 22. If I could buy 2022 for the rest of my career, I would, but it just, everything panned out really nicely. And we bottled this about 11 months. So it was right before harvest, or after aging. The interesting part is how the barrique I didn't send, because I feel like that needs a lot of time to hang out. It's still really closed up. And this was one of those things that how long it takes to learn how to make wine. A year later, you're finally seeing the impacts. And we've already been leaning towards looking at more neutrality in how we age. And this is enforcing that movement. And we're going to keep going that direction.
So what do y'all think of what he's doing here?
I think it's so helpful to taste these, especially from a single fermentation side by side. I notice more difference on the palate than I do on the nose. How do you feel like, because for me, I think Blaufränkisch is the only red that kind of edges toward reduction in the winery. Do you feel like that was an issue in the amphora versus the puncheon where you're getting a little bit of oxidative aging?
Yes, I think the oxygen is really important. So the amphora would comprise maybe in a typical blend, maybe 10%. I like its reductive fruit preservation aspect. We really prefer older barrels and puncheons for that oxygen side of it. What was interesting when we first bottled it, the amphora is the first one that was really bring in the game. And the others have caught up pretty quickly, though. So I think it's an important aspect of, because it's ceramic too, the reductive vessel. I'm tasting it more here. There's also a little spritz in it, I'm noticing, when I first opened today. We're also including now some 1,200 liter oak vessels. So we'll see where those go in the future.
Yeah, delicious. I think the large format oak makes a lot of sense for this. And we've seen a big change in our wine since we moved to that.
Yeah, I totally agree, Bryan. We're using all 500 liter and larger, and trying to get the wines into neutral as much as we can. I think it really just helps the wine sing without distracting anything from the fruit. I do like the tightness of the amphora, and that I just opened them when we started here, so it's really starting to now open up. I'd love to see it another day. Morgan, you tasted these yesterday. How is the amphora showing between yesterday and today?
Some of my notes from yesterday, I feel like the almost had a little bit of a reductive quality to the aromatics, and today I feel like that is gone. And so you were saying for amphora is a ceramic vessel?
It's a ceramic from Claver.
From Claver.
650 liter. And we're aging it upright, not laying down. But it was after ferment. We didn't ferment in it. So
you feel it's the oxygen transfer is far less in the barrel?
Yes, for sure.
We work with some from a ceramicist here. They're called Novum.
Oh yeah, Andrew?
Yeah.
I want those.
They're really cool. We just put Cab Franc in it for the first time. That's the first time we've put red wine in it. And the tannin structure is so different than what we are aging in, both barrique and punch in. And I actually see the opposite with our vessel, is that the oxygen is far greater, and the evolution of those tannins, while they stay fine grain, but they just tend to be like more approachable early. It's just interesting. I know
I think these are fired to a higher temperature, so it's a thicker matrix. I've talked to Andrew in the past, and I'm saving my piggy bank for my ceramic piggy bank for one of his or two of his vessels.
So lastly, but not leastly, we're going to finish up with the OG of it all, the 2022 from Kiona. JJ, take it away.
All right, we handpick this. It comes up to the crush pad where it goes through a mechanical and optical sorting. We're doing a ferment probably 12 to 14 days, and then 100% mallow in basically 100% neutral oak barrels for about 8 months. So it's fairly quick from vine to bottle. I think our version is, compared to the wines I've had on the table here, is a little more red fruited maybe, which is an interesting difference. One thing that we pay attention to with our lineup is generally like avoiding stylistic overlap. So I think it's important to have wines that you can see through. In a tasting, this is one of our designated see-through wines. So we don't want to like dial everything up to 11 where we're squeezing it hard and using hard press fractions and dialing up concentration and extraction. We want it to be easy breezy. So it's all free run fruit, and we're not ramming it real hard through anything from start to finish. We sell this wine direct to consumer through Wine Club and in about 40 states across the country. So I think it's probably one of the larger productions here in the Western Hemisphere. That's not a super high bar, but it's a wine that a lot of people enjoy and a lot of people like.
Well, it's certainly ever exposure to this grape variety in the early 90s, tasting in blind competitions in Chicago, long before I ever got myself to Germany to actually work in vineyards outside of Stuttgart with this variety, and developing a long-standing affiliation with this grape that is under the radar, underappreciated in many respects. Last question for y'all. Given that Blaufränkisch / Lemberger is not a highly identifiable grape variety for the average consumer of wines here in our native U.S., how is it that we can help to better communicate the value of this grape variety to the consumer, to put this in their glass, to put it at the table, to enjoy along with everyday foods? How can we better express the great work that you're doing with this grape?
I think from our perspective, we see this as a wine we want to get in front of the industry gatekeepers. I think the sommeliers and the wine nerds are, 10 years ago, you never saw this on a wine list in Brooklyn, and now every wine list has it. And so I do think it's a little bit of a darling of the sommelier grape right now. It's having its moment. And I think we need to lean into that and I think we all have, or at least from my perspective, sometimes a little bit of a hesitancy to put this in front of people and have the name in front of them. And it's got the umlaut. It's hard to say. It's hard to pronounce. But I think we just got to really lean into it and do some education in our tasting rooms and do some education with your sales teams and just say, hey, this is why we think this has a future here. And if everybody else gets a chance to taste it, the more people that have a chance to taste it, it's an easy wine to love. So you just got to get noses and glasses, and I think it'll follow.
Go ahead, Morgan.
I think I echo a lot of those thoughts. I find one of my biggest talking points is talking about climate change and just the reality that things are getting warmer. And this grape is extremely reliable to come into our cellar with beautiful chemistry, regardless of the year. And when talking about how to diversify your plantings and look forward, I think this is a great grape that's well suited for the future in Oregon, clearly a lot of other places in this country. And then I do think we need to not shy away from the name and not shy away from the story and the history of it. We actually just decided to put some in keg and just get it out to buy the glass on tap lists. And we sat here and debated, okay, should we make some fanciful name for this keg wine? No, let's just call it Blaufränkisch. Let's make people know that this really juicy and drinkable and very food friendly wine can be pretty affordable and it lasts really easily, but also is really age worthy and a great bang for your buck if you want to lay one down. I just think we need to get it in front of the gatekeepers and have them understand what the name is, that this is a great variety. If we all are all behind it, then everyone else will listen and know that we're jazzed about it. Yeah.
It's the perfect $12 glass pour, right? If you're talking about the corner bistro with an espresso machine in the back and nice outdoor seating and like a seasonal menu, like you look on the wine list and there's maybe 15 wines on the glass pour list, like this wine belongs at that type of outlet. It's easy to pair. It's easy to like, regardless of where it's coming from. It has this really food friendliness and intrinsic ability to be tasty in lots of situations. You can put a chill on it, whatever. It's just very versatile and very affable from the consumer's perspective. And rather than like stretch on the $20 glass pour from a Cabernet that might be of dubious quality, like take one step off the beaten path and try a lesser known grape, you'll get like more like dollar value type of experience if you take one step off that beaten path, I think. So that's how you sell Lemberger, I think, going forward.
David, I want it with you had a gentleman on who builds the pizza ovens, and I think that would be amazing with that kind of food. I think getting the chefs involved and getting them encouraged. Listening to you taste the wines with that guy, I was thinking, God, I'd love to have Blaufränkisch on that one.
We ran a national campaign called Burger and Burger, where we're trying to get people to, instead of order the $20 entree burger with a beer, try to get them to pair it with a glass of wine.
I was just in Annapolis in DC last week, and we do 40 SKUs in our production. Maybe I'm lowballing it just a little bit, but this was one of the top things that I tasted with people as to everyone's point, put chill on it, like Syrah, and let it warm up over a dinner. Like, I think that is what the gatekeepers were really psyched about.
The food friendliness is something that's often left out of the conversation when it comes to this grape variety because of all the other things we've discussed that make it, shall we say, as yet not quite yet discovered. But as far as the on-premise operators go, how would you suggest that the bar folk and the somms and the manager, the buyer managers responsible for the buying for their operations place your wine on their lists and where they fit in food programs, or is this just something that just needs to be sold by the glass? And hey, I got the right wine for the right food for you.
I like the wine list that put it like stylistically in terms of expressive reds or aromatic or delicate reds, medium body, or however they phrase it. There's a lot of creative ways to go about it, but putting in that range of wines that, I don't know, allows for the, I guess, I don't want to say it's super delicate because it isn't, but it's more in that line than the heavy hitting, weighty wines that a lot of people are expecting. Fruit driven, I guess I would say.
Especially with the lack of new wood across all of our wines here. I think so we're letting the variety and the fruit show itself. It sits in a fun category of lighter reds, fruit forwardness.
I would add crispness of acidity there with it too.
For sure. They're so nice with food. I think we all hit on that. That's where our selling point of the varietal, whether it's out of our tasting room or whether it's in the wholesale market, restaurant, wine by the glass, it's just such an easy pairing across lots of different menus.
Encouraging people who are selling this wine to someone who has never heard of it, read the customer, find the common line. Here in Oregon, we have a lot of customers that come in who want a bolder red wine, and they're out tasting a lot of Pinot Noir in the Valley. This is our bold red wine offering, which is not that bold in comparison to, you find someone who has just had their aha moment with Gamay, and you say, okay, we're not making a Gamay Noir, but like this Blaufränkisch is really similar in these ways. And I think find one way that like makes people feel comfortable and offer them something new, because it is, as we keep saying, it's super versatile.
Most of these, you're looking for an easy in with trying to introduce people to a wine they might not be comfortable with. At least try a dish that they're very comfortable with, and without at the risk of sounding pedantic and echoing too much what JJ was saying, the burger and burger thing to me works again for not all, but I'd say most of the wines we've tasted today. That the structure of the wines, the organoleptic profiles that they tend to inhabit, make them readily matchable for not overly seasoned or topping adulterated burgers. For those people who are into beef burgers, if you want to do your mushrooms, if you're a vegetarian, go for it. That can work as well, because there's definitely umami both in beef and in mushrooms in these wines. So again, the easy in is that with an easy, understandable dish is a great way to go, at least to try to get people's attention. From there, they can move on. Listen, it's been a great conversation talking about Blaufränkisch and Lemberger here in the United States with the five of you from disparate corners of the U.S. viticultural globe. Thank you all for joining Drinking on the Edge.
Thanks for having us.
Been a pleasure.